Video games are always presenting us with choices. Some are easy, and some aren't. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 10 hardest choices we've had to make in video games. Just a quick disclaimer, keep in mind there are a ton of other games that have very hard decisions in them. We just, ironically enough, couldn't decide on which ones to do. There's really no way to do all of this in one video, so we will be doing more in the future. And also, just a really quick spoiler warning, there's gonna be spoilers in this video for sure. Starting off with number 10, in Life is Strange, you have to do a bunch of, well, strange things, obviously. And this includes bending time and doing a lot of sort of traveling within interdimensional stuff. And it eventually lands you in a place where stuff gets too messed up to save everyone. And the choice you're eventually presented with is, do you save Chloe or do you sacrifice Arcadia Bay? Now throughout the whole game, you end up saving Chloe because that's like the thing you tend to do in this kind of game. And as it turns out, it's been gradually building up as sort of cosmic disaster, and you can kind of choose to ignore it. If Chloe is more important to you at that point, sure, yes. There's really nothing stopping you from choosing her over a bunch of people, except you kill a bunch of people to save one person. And therein lies the difficulty. Moving on to number 9, Kaiden or Ashley from Mass Effect. Oh, what a decision. Did not expect that decision to come up at any point, because they do plenty to characterize pretty much everybody in Mass Effect. Everybody has their flaws, everybody has their strengths, and if you go looking, you'll find some pretty wild arguments about which one is right to save and which one isn't. You'll find people who talk about how they never really made a connection with one of the two characters. As far as flaws, well, one of them is fairly xenophobic, obviously, but the other isn't exactly, like, super pleasant. He's kinda whiny, actually. They both certainly have their use as far as utility goes. Ashley outranks you, and Kaiden has all of his biotics, and that's obviously quite useful in a fight. But I have a feeling a lot of people more make this choice based on who they connected with and who didn't. There's one very slightly redeeming element of this choice, and that is that these two seem fairly mutually exclusive. Even in the game, you end up liking one and usually not caring about the other. It kind of depends on what you get into the game for and what you're enjoying about it. And moving on to number 8, this one is less about specific characters or sacrificing an individual and more about how you go about handling something. Throughout the game in BioShock, you're given the opportunity to either harvest or rescue the little sisters. This, of course, has a direct effect on the ending and is a big deal. You get the nice ending or the depressing ending based on which one you do. But the game kind of incentivizes you to do the thing that gives you the bad ending and harvest the little sisters for their atom. Atom being the substance that allows one to rewrite DNA, giving one the powers that one gets in BioShock, obviously making the game easier to have more of. It makes you more powerful, of course. So when the thing that makes you more powerful gives you the less good ending, it presents you with quite a quandary. Do you sort of unleash the possibilities of the game's mechanics, or do you attempt to get an ending that feels more satisfying and significantly more cathartic? That's a hell of a choice to present the player with, and during the course of the game, you may not even know that this is what you're choosing. Moving on to number 7, in Far Cry 3, you're given the opportunity to either kill your friends or save your friends. This is pretty much the defining choice as far as the ending goes. If you choose to kill your friends, you end up with Citra, who that gets steamy quick, and then after it gets steamy, she gets stabby. Some people think that's worth it. The warrior's death, you die. Don't know that it's worth the steamy elements of things. But if you choose your friends, you live. Citra dies, as a matter of fact, because Dennis gets into an altercation with you and ends up accidentally stabbing her. You see, he's mad that he didn't get with her, I guess. And also mad that you didn't get with her, which is, I don't know, I don't fully understand Dennis's reasoning there. I realize he can't see the future and understand that you're gonna die if you pick that ending. But, I mean, what else are you gonna say to him? I was gonna die if I picked that one? He doesn't know you're a video game. He doesn't know he's a video game. Anyway, you end up monologuing over shots of the island, lamenting if you decide to save your friends. You never recover from it either way, so I don't know, maybe dying was better? Moving on to number 6, in Spec Ops: The Line, you are presented with a scenario in which a convicted soldier and a convicted civilian, and you have to decide who gets executed. Now, the civilian stole water, which I don't know if you consider that a real crime, but in the world of the game, it's a massive one. I don't know, if it was real life, I could probably understand wanting some water. And the soldier's job was to apprehend the civilian who had stolen the water, but in the process instead killed his entire family. The game presents these two as responsible for the man's family's death, but I don't know, for me the choice isn't really that hard. If he stole water and stealing water's a crime, then the obvious thing is not to kill his family, but instead, I don't know, charge him for the crime. But there's also people who I know who would say, well, if he just decided not to steal the water. My argument against that is that, of course, water is a fundamental building block of life, at least on Earth, and it's really hard to fault somebody with a family who's stealing water in an area that is, well, you know, devoid of water. Much, much harder for me to blame that person than the soldier who just decided, oh, he's stealing water. It's worth killing his whole family to get to him. That's just me, though. I've gotten into arguments about this one online, and I'll tell you, there are people that are pretty stringently opposed to my viewpoint on this, indicating it's a much harder choice than it seems. The question really is, what is realistic? Letting him just have the water or not? As I said, water isn't exactly abundant in the world of the game, so I get it, at least. It's just impossible for me to fault the guy. Bring water to your family, duh. I would totally do it. Moving on to number 5, sacrifice love or wealth in Fable 2. Now, Fable 2 is a friggin' awesome game. Did it overpromise? Yes. Did every game by Peter Molyneux overpromise? Yes. That doesn't mean it's not an awesome game. And it presents you with the choice at the end of the game of going down a path of sacrifice, of love, or of wealth. Now, it's a bit of a tough one. Not necessarily the wealth one. It's pretty easy to put the wealth one aside. You can make tons of money in Fable 2. It's not hard. But between sacrifice and love, sacrifice of course gives you the best alignment as far as good goes, and it gives you a statue. Everybody loves having their own statue, right? Everybody who has a statue anyways. I don't have a statue, so I don't really know. But love, of course, gets you a family and saves your dog. Dogs are great, right? In their own way, they're all kind of a sacrifice because they put you down a path that definitely limits you, particularly wealth. If you decide that you want wealth in the game, you definitely don't need to pick wealth. It's a total waste of a choice. The statue's not great, honestly. It's probably about what would happen if somebody made a statue of me in real life. They'd put it somewhere that's out of the way and it wouldn't be that big. Be basically a passive-aggressive statue. But on the other hand, that's the one you need to pick if you do the DLC, so Moving on to number 4. In Black Ops 2, you're given a lot of choices for people to kill, and at some point you need to choose whether or not you kill Harper and Menendez. Now, you're given these choices at different times, and if you kill Harper, his friend Farad more or less never recovers and ends up taking a bullet for someone later. Really, he ends up suffering either way, so it's kind of a wash. Neither choice is really a good one, per se. And then later you're also presented with the choice of killing the bad guy or capturing him. Menendez is, of course, kind of a bad fella. Basically, if you kill Menendez, his plan doesn't stop and the White House burns down. So you have to capture him in order to stop everything, but on the other hand, it's a lot more satisfying to put a bullet in the dude's head. His plan is not cool. Moving on to number 3, in The Witcher 3, there's a hell of a time where you have to pick between putting a baby in the oven or not. Now, you don't really put a baby in the oven and cook it or anything. It's actually an elaborate trick in which you're intended to make it look as if you've done something bad for a demon that is possessing a person and feeding off of them. It's still a heat of the moment thing where you're saying to yourself, do I put a baby in an oven? But the tension is relieved fairly quickly when they bring the baby out and hey, look, we didn't charbroil the baby. The demon sees that the baby is whole and realizes it can't feed on Geralt's conscience because Geralt didn't just do something that he regretted. The outcome is obviously better to put the baby in the oven. However, you just heard what I said, we're talking about putting a baby in the oven. It's very hard to be in the moment when it's really forcing you to make a decision fast. Go, yeah, put the baby in the oven, of course. And at number 2, the final choice of killing Michael or killing Trevor or going into the big Death Wish thing. Essentially, Death Wish is the canon ending, and I picked it without a lot of trouble. But at the same time, both of the other endings give you a lot of insight as to the other character and what they really think of the character that you picked to die. So, in my opinion, it's actually kind of worth it just to do all of them. And obviously do Death Wish last because it ends the best. But if you had to pick one, you really do give it some pause. They're all actually quite interesting, and I guess that's kind of the real pickle you're in, so to speak, regarding the choice. But of course, we all want our characters not dead. So Death Wish, although named maybe inappropriately, makes sure that they all stay alive, and in my opinion is of course the best and also canon choice. And finally at number 1, Jane or Kenny from The Walking Dead Season 2. Now the Walking Dead Telltale series is just littered with choices that are difficult to make, and this is one of the doozies. The reason is basically you want both of these characters alive, for very different reasons of course. Kenny is decent, Jane is kind of not decent, but very interesting. And it's Kenny's selflessness, the trait that you might want to save him for, that is actually kind of his weakness when it comes to Clementine. Clementine is, of course, able to manipulate him through that, whereas Jane, not as good a person at all, isn't so easily coerced. It basically makes you grapple with the fact that in the very harsh world of the game, the things that you value aren't necessarily things that are useful, and it asks you to figure out whether you prioritize human goodness over survival, which is, again, really not an easy choice. What did you do in all these instances? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.